Okay, this is gonna be, oh my gosh, already had another aha moment, and I realized it happened. Let's give honor to the source, of the Creator, the Most High, the ancestors for making all this possible. Man, I swear sometimes that resistance, you will go through something, you'll feel like, oh my gosh, all this is happening to me right now, da 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 da, boom. As I said before, the emotion leads you right to like, is a gateway to something even greater. What am I, and it's funny because what I'm going to dive into has a lot to what you see on my screen right now. And, because me, I'm so visual to where I have to pull this up before. I mean, after I'm doing what I'm doing. So yeah, I'm just make sure that it's there. So notice to the left, maybe you're right. Today I had put in something probably not even an hour ago. Like it hit me when I was driving. After I had like a moment where I purged so much emotionally, where I've said before in my previous video how I had to, how I cried a lot from apologizing to myself and for asking myself for forgiveness. And it's not, when I say myself, it like, you can say your higher self, inner child, and so forth. I was apologizing to my inner child in significance of the fact of what I did not know, how I could not protect myself as a child, and having to carry that load or that burden or that pain or whatever into my adulthood, into my relationships, you know, from childhood development, from learned behavior and so forth, until now, I'm realizing that a belief system that I carried also, which I realized as a darker man, has been fueled so much so for us to be viewed so sexually rather than sensual. And the reason I was like, whoa, I realized my sexual traumas led me to, emotionally, from facing things emotionally, mentally, spiritually, led me to the importance of embracing what we all have, is the importance of our sensuality, you know. And again, everyone has, you know, can display or express sexuality, but from an over-sexualized society, which I'm probably going to pull up as well, having an over-sexualized society or culture or through music and so forth, it's the importance of this is related also to the chakra system of the root chakra, which on a grander scale of things, a lot of us who are going through a healing journey, spiritual journey, or coming out of the lower state into a higher state of awareness, whether that's consciously or just, you know, having these activations from the fact of being at such a lower level sexually. And it's not just to say like it's good or bad. It's bringing more awareness to where how a shift collectively is happening with everyone individually, and even how the generations after will know how to protect this, what we know is not so much about sexuality, but and it has nothing to do with gender. It's the importance of being energy ciphering, especially from the matriarchal in our daughters. And when you see how music and what it's geared towards and how it connects so much spiritually to how and why our modern day women express the way they express themselves. So where I'm getting to is like speaking from a man's perspective, if I'm going to use gender, but energetically speaking from the feminine and masculine attributes of how I've unfolded, as you see here, just like this lotus picture. It's so symbolic to a lot of things, to where and how I've come to connect more to the awareness of sexuality and sensuality, or, you know. And with that, I was like, whoa, I realized through the sexual traumas, I realized that a lot of us did not have mothers or grandmothers and so forth. Not to say eons ago or matriarchal, you know, in the matriarchal aspect. Those who are aware know that when you mention a goddess, or when you mention a deity, when you mention attributes of what the matriarchal entails, or the beauty of it, is more so of the it's not in the energetic level. It's not having much to do with sexuality. It has a lot to do with, on an energetic aspect, like sensuality, or just that how could I say this? I can see how sexuality could be perceived as more so like a masculine, what we see on the physical, but the sensuality is something more intimate in a more internal setting. That could be my perspective on it. And the reason I say that is because it has to begin somewhere. But when I realized that in the previous generations, a lot of our mothers and grandmothers didn't get to operate or channel their sensuality, and I could see how a lot of that could be envied when you do see a woman of a certain caliber, a certain status, and they be more focused on her, sexuality or her appearance, the beauty of that, rather than seeing the inner beauty, which it begins with, the inner aspect of how you see this little boy blossoming from a lotus. I was telling one of my a beautiful sister the other day, I was telling her, like, I was like, we forget, like, we so caught up in seeing the flower and forgetting that the seed comes before the flower. So that goes back to us even seeing so much of what's on the surface in a material aspect, or even the misuses of how, and I'm going to bring in the Orisha, like Oshun, Ochun, or Yemoya, or Yemoja, how, people express it, or, in different cultures, and connect that river aspect of Oshun, her beauty, and also the grander scale of how that connects to Yemoya. Because what's happening right now, before I dive deeper into that aspect, because I'm going to speak about my experience, I'm realizing, like, a lot of the friction in the spiritual community amongst these sisters, amongst these energies, that is conflicting right now. I've been sitting back and observing and watching these women who are spiritualists. Again, I'm telling you how there is a twist and how there's a cleansing of these spiritual people who are a representation of said spiritualist, sorcery, or call themselves priestess and so forth. And there is a divine justice at play, because there is a misusage or a misconception or even manipulation in how they're operating in so much of manipulation, whether they're unconscious of it or not. And that's only solely because there is a cleansing, again, in the spiritual community, as well as what you see in the physical community. Even when spiritual community means, again, people who operate in the physical, who represent the spiritual community. And also people who on the earthly plane represents a physical aspect of the misusage of the feminine energy and principle to manipulate the masses and so forth. So what's coming to me now when we talk about the corn, PORN, that part, and also the ape, APE, but you put a R in front of it. A lot of this collective energy of what has happened from generations, of what has happened to our mothers and great grandmothers and so forth, and the children carrying this over sexualized energy and not realizing what is the root cause of that. A lot of people don't know, when I talk about sexual traumas and so forth, that is also and can and will be alchemized in a way for a lot of you to face. What I mean by alchemized or transmuting it is that, being that your mother and great grandmother, a lot of them didn't have the opportunities to alchemize this, you have the opportunity to alchemize your sexual, being seen so overly sexualized, and even it stemming from a sexual trauma, to where that's why you express yourself. This is why you see in social medias or certain platforms where you notice that a woman, depending on who she is, whether she knows it or aware of it or not, deep down, a part of her, and I recognize like just the deep aspect of what actually the feminine attributes represent in both men and women. When you see that childhood comes before adulthood, it is a major theme how the over-sexualized has to be rooted in being preyed on childhood wounds or sexual traumas. That being said, this is why so much of the monetary system is used into it. This is why so much of certain corporations or businesses had made so much money or currency from it, because so much energy is siphoned to keep that afloat. But now that we're shifting from the fact of how the spiritual woman who's in tune, who doesn't have to manipulate, I'm talking about the holistic woman, I'm talking about the woman who connects herself to all. That's what the divine mother or matriarchal is, the great mother is. That's what the Yemoja is, the mother of all, the mother of the sacred mother of children, who cares and protects. When you see the fact of how certain characters do not care for themselves and also their children, how they exploit their children, whether via social media, and they don't realize as you exploit them, you're exposing them to unnecessary spirits. You're exposing them to unnecessary vices. You're exposing them. Okay, and that's the thing about the protection of your essence. Something you didn't know. Something, again, generationally, you didn't even realize, like why your mother who never talked about her sexual traumas, and you learn this behavior. And this is why, again, how the healing is happening, or, in reverse, or more so in reverse as internal, external. And as a collective aspect, this is happening with a lot of women who are being forced to relax millenniums and to see the importance of, as you call back your energy, as you step in more into yourself, as you cleanse your waters, those who represents, like who call themselves the represents the Orishas right now, who proclaim to be high priestess, who proclaim to be of a certain status spiritually, and don't realize that consequences are coming to them for their spiritual ass whoopings, because they have manipulated so many people. I see it playing out, and that goes for women and men. And the thing I realize about this is because they siphon so much of women who have sexual traumas. And a lot of these women, it's going to be made very clear that they do not represent these divine deities, or these deities that represent the totality of what matriarchal entails and how it enables and gives birth to everything patriarchally. So that being said, you're going to see an exposure on all levels. Internally with the family, starting from the root cause, and to how everything has given fruit to what you see. And so how is that reversed? You have to recognize who's the rotten fruit, who's the fruit that's not prospering. Somebody walk by, but anyway, who's not pouring really into the family dynamic, the tribal dynamic. You have to pay attention to the mothers and aunties and so forth, who do not reflect that genuine or holistic mother. They represent or have been representing the distorted mother, the false mother, who do not pour into themselves, who do not pour into their daughters, who do not instill in them daughters the vital significance of protecting their womb space. Protecting their womb space. So, again, that healing aspect is going to reveal that of who has been masking themselves and no longer can. And they're going to fade away, just as I said before, as any celebrity, as anybody else and so forth, who represents themselves as an Orisha or some type of some type of aspect of that archetype. Because a lot of them, y'all don't realize, have been doing this purposefully to keep their rank up in the earth, but in the aspect of the spiritual, they do not have any. That's why a lot of you, as you start to pour back your energy as mothers and start to call back and face certain things generationally, it will be revealed to you what you are connected to spiritually. It's going to be made very clear what the origins of this world, this realm, and what it connects to emotionally, mentally, spiritually, playing out in the physical. So again, we don't come from, a lot of us at a point in time, that you're talking about how the image of a mother, especially a darker woman, and all women have been perceived. When you look at the image currently of a woman with a certain complexion, I'm going to speak on different levels, it is only looked at as sexual. And let's get into that, because I was supposed to get into my part, but I realize I'm supposed to talk about this. Now, if you want to look up what sexual is, and this is why it's so important, because we're taught young, very young, in the school setting of sex, right? But we're not educated on the important parts of how those who are in the spiritual community. And you know, I wonder why they aren't telling the younger women, but they're geared towards what you're going to see the exposure of. They're more focused on the women, but they're not focused on the inner child, or realizing, why do you gatekeep that aspect from telling your daughter or their daughters the importance of their sensuality or their feminine energy that they need to protect? This is what you're going to see an exposure of a lot of women who are representation, no matter what their character or their status and so forth, or their how they portray their sexuality. It's because that's all they have. That's all they have is their physical. As you see right here, it says physical and emotional intimacy involving sexual acts. And once you see what the world and how a lot of our mothers, great-grandmothers, and so forth had to give up something unwillingly, do you not realize you still carry that resonance? Some of you still carry that resentment, that anger, and that rage in your womb because of some of your mothers were brought here. Some of y'all know. Some of y'all currently have experienced this. Things unwanted. And the reason I say that is because I'm able, as a representation of both patriarchal and matriarchal energies or archetypes, because I come through my mother and my father, she had to meet to bring me here. So I carry both of, not only both of them having feminine and masculine energies, but I carry that in my DNA structure. I carry that ancestrally. So from my sexual traumas, I realized, how could I connect this and speak from a place where I can connect that bridge from how women are and where they can become, and be able to start to see the beauty even in what you've experienced. If you were a victim, or if you were later on in your years that happened to you, and you maybe didn't realize, like, through that over sexualizing yourself, you ended up with someone who just saw you on the surface level, who just saw you on a physical level. And it's even to the mothers who had multiple kids and even multiple baby fathers. I still love you. I still have grace. I still have a sense of empathy and compassion, because some of you did not know. And some of you still carrying rage and so forth, because you're carrying spiritually these man DNA things he has unresolved patriarchally and matriarchally in his lineage. You're carrying so much that you have no idea of. And you have had no idea because your mom and them didn't even know the spiritual significance of a lot of these things. So we coming from generations of millions of people, women who were tortured, who were harmed, who were manipulated, who were forced upon. And now we are the generations presently who are called to rest and relax and to reflect and to dig deeper within ourselves, to recognize the difference between what we have been going through physically, sexually, but what we have been ignoring also, the sensual parts of ourselves, to be able to see the beauty and how we become so over-sexualized, and now to bring balance to that sensuality and then that physical. Because a lot of us, I can honestly say, I didn't even know what being sensual was. Because of what I went through traumatically and what you see on my screen here today, this is one of my books, and this book right here, during these very pivotal moments in my time, I was still, not even a year or two ago, I was still trying to grasp the concept of what that I realized I was in a connection, or in connections where, and this is just authenticity, where I can only see my partner, or thought what, it's not that we were intimate, but at that time I could only see that being sexual was something that was sustainable, or to keep a relationship. How many of us can be honest with ourselves and say, wow, I thought that's how you keep a connection in a relationship? Well, let me tell you, no, it's not, because it's much deeper on the emotional level. When I look and observe women, and I love them, because at a point in time, as much as I wanted to hate women from what I've experienced with my mother, I realized, no, this is a portal and a gateway for you to come to correct that was within yourself, and then be able to confidently express this to mothers, young women, so that they can get awareness. So whether they can accept, reject, or right now come, or in due time come around to what could someday change their life. So again, that's the thing where, again, I didn't realize, I had to look at the matriarch and realize, like, whoa, when I look at what my mother came through and from, I can honestly say she over-sexualized herself. She gave herself up unwillingly. It's almost like spiritual rape. And that's what a lot of women are unaware of when you're giving yourself up. It's the same thing with men. When we're taught in the culture to treat a woman like this, to talk to her like this, to just, plant your seed, but not have the awareness of the significance of planting your seed as a representation of a man that will build his own kingdom or empire, and you're just planting your seed and have no consequence, and don't realize there's consequences to that. Whether you can go out here and live your life like willingly and just think there's no consequences, it may not come to you. You could have, that father or something could have happened to him. Okay, now you're in prison, or you're this, which I look at as spiritual karma or physical karma playing out for some people at the same moment. Some of those things bring people to the realization through that justice to find more awareness around what are they here to do. You gotta realize a lot of this goes deeper to, when we're talking about sexual refers to physical and emotional intimacy involving sexual acts, right? A lot of us have no idea as men, modern day men, how we're portrayed, especially darker men, when it comes to our image, when it comes to our sexuality, when it comes to how we are so superior in so many ways, sexually and all this other stuff. A lot of that shit, I used to be like, when I was young, I never cared to be viewed like that. I never cared to be viewed like that, because the more I got in tune with myself, with my essence and my inner child, I realized, like, whoa, that highlighted the little boy who was touched on young by women. I didn't think women can be like that. I didn't think men can be like that. We didn't think that people can be like that. But now you're looking at a world that's crumbling because of over-sexualizing a child young, over-sexualizing, exposing us very young, being molested by those very people, and the society, and the community, humiliation, brushing it aside. So we only knew what sexuality meant, or we were driven and aroused by sexual things, but never on the spiritual aspect of being intimate with self, or learning what it is to show up for self. And it's funny how it says focus on the reproductive and procreative aspect of human relationship. Again, when we were young, they gave us a brief description of what sex was, and then they tell you about how you can get this from sex, but there was never no detail or elaboration on not only the consequences, but it plants seeds in your mind to be like, oh, I'm curious of this. But imagine learning the beauty of getting warnings of stranger danger young, or talking up and being honest about, you shouldn't let people touch you, or you shouldn't let, all these things, because again, we are the generation that is going to bring more awareness to this wellness. I'm talking about things that involve sexual, mental, spiritual, and physical wellness. That's why you have a high rate of sexual transmitted disease in the world right now, because we're acting like, at a point in time, if you're not telling people, your kids and so forth, the importance of energy exchange, spiritual exchange, or STDs or whatever else, and then you're also not telling them the importance of protecting yourself, protecting our daughters from the uncles, the men, the other men who have no awareness on how they're supposed to manage their impulses, but they manipulate these very little girls. These things that y'all see and playing out with celebrities or whomever it is, that shit has been going on for centuries, years, eons, and so forth. It's just broadcasted through digital. This has already been going on in the communities. Most of them people have probably been, I don't care if they're rappers, women or men, most of them probably have went through some type of, they've probably been traumatized, whether sexually, physically, or verbally. And that, again, the powers that ain't, or used to be, fuels that. Because it's like they know specifically what people love to feed off of. It feeds your ego. It feeds the wounded aspect. It feeds the wounded masculinity that has spread like a wildfire. And then now, a lot of us are here to douse that shit. But it ain't even just doused it. We're here to literally, through that fire, become the phoenix. Because of everything that was literally created to destroy us from the powers that ain't it used to be, is the very thing we're going to rise from the ashes for. That's what we're doing now. Now imagine when I say sensual refers to, pleasures through senses, such as touch, taste, smell, sight. Okay, the reason I want to dive deeper into this is because we think that intimacy, admittedly, our programming, or due to the society and cultural and societal norms, we automatically think something sexual. And a lot of us young men, very young, we're not educated or not enlightened on the importance of spilling our seed or planting our seed. And I'm talking about the sexual intercourse, the awareness around that. So when you look at certain demographics, I emphasize on this so much because I was exposed so young to sex, not just from what I've talked about with my mom, but I remember, like, I thought it was so cool to let my older cousins into the crib, and I remember it's a memory coming up. Like, I used to let my cousin use my room, one of my older cousins, because it's wild, because he never had a house. But he would come, and my mom was always gone, but he would come and just use that room. And it's so funny because it's like, now that I think about that, it's like I was exposed thinking this is cool. I'm seeing this behavior, learning this behavior subconsciously through my eyes. And guess what I ended up doing? The same shit. Bringing people in the very same room later on in the years. Then not knowing the consequences behind it, because I'm thinking this is normal. And then not only that, it's just the fact of not seeing the value in that exchange, to where, okay, you have a child, and then now you have a lot of men, young men, and people out here having children, but don't know the value of that procreation or that creation, that life, because of learned behavior, because of what we have taken on so much, and not seeing the spiritual significance in the fact of that baby inheriting what your learned patterns, or your emotions, your spiritual well-being. All of these things are accumulated a part of your inheritance. And so when you look at the generations, when you look at certain demographics, I look at the bigger picture of the collective energy there, and seeing what are they getting fueled? How are they being fed spiritually, physically? What type of resources are they open to? Notice certain demographics have certain foods there, certain Planned Parent childhood. You go to a certain place, they don't have none of that. They don't have none of that shit. Then the resources they have. Some places have resources to certain foods. You're giving these people poison. So a lot of these things play specifically on their mental well-being, physical well-being, and so forth. When you see even how, like, I'm telling you, bro, like, when you look at how over-sexualized certain people are in certain demographics, I keep telling y'all the energy is in all of it. When you look at corn, with the P, there is mostly that image of that is not someone that particularly looks like me at a time. That image at a time looked like women that was just, that would be popularized. And I start to reflect and realize, like, wow, this is a society that only views women sexually, in a physical way. They don't encourage women who have been, it's not emphasized. It's not even protected. It's almost like we're going to let you go through it, but we don't care to really protect or really highlight or even whistleblow the fact that you really have went through some trauma. And then you do the same resources aren't available to certain demographics. So that's a whole nother thing. This is why I spread my message, because I'm a voice for those very women in those certain areas. Like I of sisters that I know personally that have went through that. Women that I know have went through things that it's like, whoa, so traumatic, and you ask yourself, how can they come back from that? How? Because all they know in their deep programming, and this is the mental illness around it, is that they're so easily seen, or the image of them being that they've been devalued or dehumanized, to only be looked at sexually, not even in a sensual way, not even in a beautiful way, internally and externally. And so then you have the same women who gives birth to what you may see as a darker man who carries this same emotional resonance, this idea and belief system, and then you bring the music, then you bring the culture along, and we acting like we don't see who has influence. When you hear certain music, bro, we acting like we don't realize, like, the influence of how our mothers were out there, like, as if, like, those wild parties wasn't happening. Like, we acting like they weren't part of, certain things in the 90s and 80s and so forth. This ain't about course correcting everyone or just trying to make one believe and convince. This is about, like, the depths of coming home to self and healing for those who are ready. Like I said, I had to dive deeper more into my experience. I became so exposed young in a home environment, in multiple homes, to where I was like, sometimes you can even find yourself repeating and learning patterns, because in the deeper awareness, I thought all I knew, or even deeper, like, I thought certain relationships was only to keep a woman was through sex, because that's the thing that we don't realize through men that are darker, depending on what they were exposed to. Because it could have been another dude who think, like, oh, becoming the biggest drug dealer is how I'm gonna get women. And that was another thing. That's how you have women who were aroused, as they say. Sexual refers to aroused, or their desire to have a man with money, their desire to have a man with, flashy cars, all this flashiness, all this illusionary stuff. And it's not to say that what they got, it's not to discredit what they have. I'm talking about on a deeper level of what is the intention behind that man to manipulate that younger girl, and why is that brushed over, or to knowing that it will, just like we see in certain rap cultures and certain things, all those things to arouse women, all those things to say in music to arouse the little girls. And y'all thinking this shit is just some fucking whoop-de-doo, la la la. No, man. It's all for even to connect to women, to even want to be intimate. They don't even realize. I remember I was in a connection with a girl. I was like, bro, what is it? And this is how I started to recognize stuff physically. I was like, what is it so much that you don't even know this person and you're so infatuated by their looks? But now I start to learn stuff more deeper and spiritual. I was like, you can have that so-called celebrity or so forth that you hear about, and now I recognize like that shit's so traumatic. They hear all the time from them, go this person, or they see it broadcast that they went through something physically or verbally, abuse or so forth. I'm looking at the deeper aspect of realizing like, wow, now I reflect that these characters were purposely put there, placed there on this world stage for a bigger picture, to keep the masses, or to keep especially the matriarchal and women in a place of confusion about who it is they are and what actually a man is, not in a wounded state, but it's to keep the wounded masculinity going through these artists and through these people, to keep them more focused on their sexuality, to keep them aroused through music. Same thing with women. Certain artists, that's the only thing that they can do. But I look at them on a deeper spiritual level. That doesn't mean they're not spiritual. It's just how they use how have they used their music to get their sales, to pull you in. It's spiritual. It's currency to get your attention. And now that all of it's crumbling, I'm starting to recognize like, wow, how you don't even know this man. But all of that stuff plays on them. And then this is why they like feel so enamored, or oh my gosh, it's and it's like a little girl. And I know women who don't care at all. They don't see nothing at all, because I realize like they don't care, or they just simply in tune. And it's like they already know what comes with that. For one, everyone has their preference, but at the same time, I'm looking at a bigger scale to how a lot of our women, little girls, are being reached or have been reached spiritually to attract certain things that they don't realize, like that they don't even really want, as they gradually learn more about who they are and what and who these people actually represent and what they're connected to. The greatest fear is for people to rise up in their power, and then the divine retribution is to do to people what they've done to you. And this is on all levels. So again, it's like I could sit back and be like, how can you want to be so infatuated with this person while you have a whole partner or spouse or someone right there? And it's wild because it just keeps a narrative of keeping people from not really seeing the value in themselves. That's how I perceive it. And for me, again, learning more about even what I went through sexually young, it brought me to this place to connect the dots, to become more clear on, for me, like I could care less if my daughter knows anything about a celebrity or people like that, because I just see it deeper. I just see it on a deeper awareness. Like, why would you want, I ask myself, why would you want your child infatuated over somebody that you know nothing about? You don't know the depths. And this is coming from more of a conscious awareness, like self. I don't know what comes with that person. I don't know who they are. I know what they're involved in, because when you look at the culture, you can't, when you look at just the atmosphere of that, you cannot just look at to realize, like, to know what they're not involved in. It's no difference than people I know that go party or go do what they do. I know what comes with, entertainment or certain things like that. It's all to grasp your attention. It's all to keep your attention there. It's also to keep you entertained, like to try to keep your focus on that. And now that things are shifting, I'm realizing like, wow, we're going from an over-sexualized to people become more in tune to channeling why have they been in this over-sexualized society. And a lot of women don't have no idea why they do what they do. So when you come from a dishonest foundation where women first want honesty, it's very intimidating because it's unfamiliar to them. When I say, hey, I can recognize your pattern, I'm not judging you. At the same moment, you still have an opportunity to face certain things. You still have an opportunity to see yourself in a more healthier way. So I see exactly why certain characters don't want to push a certain narrative in a desperation and so forth. Because that was the narrative. And as it fades away more and more, you're going to be able to see a lot of them clearly. Because what are we protecting here? You got to ask yourself, what are we protecting here? They were in place not to protect our children. That's what you got to I don't care who they are. If you pay attention, they were in place not to care about and care for your children. Or you. Because not caring for the children, it reflects they don't care for their inner child. And for a lot of, it says a lot about them who have kids. And they exploit them and expose them on certain social media platforms. And you can see the same very fucking repetitive pattern or loop that they're going to continue, and it's going to happen right through their kids. Those with eyes can see, especially those spiritually with eyes can see. And I want no parts in some of these people, what they're doing. I'm like, bro, no, that's the thing about a lot of people carrying a belief system from an old world that's crumbling instead of developing their home. So again, are we going to continue enabling over-sexualization, or start to learn more about our own sensory, our own awareness? You know, as it speaks about sensual experiencing through pleasures through senses such as touch, taste, smell, and sight and sound. Now think about this. If you were educated early on the fact of what sensuality is, we will have more children knowing the importance of touch, taste, smell, sight. Now think about how a lot of us wasn't even in tune with this shit. A lot of us came from stuff that was just over-sexualized. We were exposed very young. Like I said, I've told you before how a lot of things in the home, some of the most darkest things that I did not want to experience, I did. Now I'm at a place like, wow, I want to protect those very things. And then whatever's connected to me, such as a daughter, such as a son. I do not want my son to be out here thinking like, that would be the type of woman that you want. Is that the type of woman that you want to not even bring home to your mom, but raise your kids or grow your kids or grow with you? Is this the type of woman? And that's the thing again, what has been pushed so much to where I see why clearly a lot of them can only talk about their body. They're not in tune with themselves. I don't care who it is. They're not in tune. And I also can see the spiritualists, certain people who have been trying to manipulate women by talking about certain things as such spiritually. But at the same time, they leave them out to dry. They're not really guiding them through the fact of, on a deeper level, how to unravel and face these traumas and emotions psychologically, subconsciously, and so forth. And if they are, you will see a drastic change, a shift in these very women today. And they aren't. That's how I call bluff and bullshit. Because a lot of them just want to siphon their energy, which again, transmute into some type of currency. Make books or do all these other things. Like, y'all be surprised, bro, how so much is going to be exposed on all platforms. Because people haven't really been holding people accountable. They've just been narcissists in spiritual communities, in all aspects, because this is what we've come from. We were a part of it. I was a part of it, a part of the fact of not realizing how, unconsciously, I was a part of things until I became more aware. So my book right here, this one says Reborn Through You, had a lot to do with my connections with people. Had a lot to do with not just them mirroring back, but I was being reborn anew from the fact of being rebirthed through my experiences. Not judging or holding the cloud over anyone, but I was like, whoa, this lotus was reminding me to come out of that water, to grow those roots from the depths. And in that transition, and in that unveiling of that, I had to go through the fact of humiliation, the smear campaign, so many things to where when I start facing things within me, people start to fall away. When I start to acknowledge the very things that I was creating and being called to do, I could not feel shame and guilt around it. I had to have even more courage and confidence, even more so, no matter who accepted it, not caring at all. Because I realized, like, how are you going to ask me to do this, to pioneer and talk about telling little boys and little girls, or even our women today and men who are so consumed by their own shit, their own traumas. The divine said, do it anyway. Do it anyway. Because you're going to see a shift in those mothers and people are going to be looking, not just so much externally, but realizing how much of the foundations that are crumbling in the shift to where now there are going to be people set in place. And they're going to realize how much they've been manipulated, how much they've been confused on being back and forth between what it is that that's for the betterment of their well-being, and how that again is connected to everything around them. They don't just want to get by no more, simply like cut corners and instant gratification. You got people, oh, pay me for this, instead of the longevity, instead of the slow process of watching yourself blossom and enjoying it, but still also going through the emotions, by still going through the fact of, again, it took me 35 years to even know what sensuality was, because I realized it's not so much external where we look for it, we got to be this for ourselves. Mothering myself is learning to be sensual. Guess what comes with that? An identity change, a shift, and evolving allows you to become, your attire will change, your mindset, renewing of your mind shifts everything internally, your emotion, how you present yourself to the world, not from those who presented themselves just for surface, and then you're going to recognize they have done no type of inner work. They haven't done nothing in here. So that's why you can see some of the people I know growing up, they can have the money, they can have the status and so forth. They'll change their clothes, they'll put on the best this and best that, and then sometimes they reek spiritually. They're rotten, they're empty. Those who are in tune, sometimes you can go around people and you can smell it, the entity attachment. You can just smell the discernment will have you be like, whoa. And that's how some of these characters out here, I don't care what status they are, y'all be surprised, y'all be wanting to meet these people. I have no idea. A lot of you don't even realize like how much so you have been groomed spiritually, and then now you out here acting out physically like a little immature child, undeveloped child emotionally. You haven't even evolved inwardly. You haven't even faced nothing. So it makes sense why people are here. Oh my gosh, it's this person. Oh my gosh, I gotta get married to this person, or I gotta connect to this person to make it big. To make what big? Everything about you is already vibrant. Everything about you is already amazing. Everything about who we are. They'll never tell you that. They don't want to. Because they know. But then once you get into that awareness, you won't be so much dependent on going to see them in concerts or being a part of their business and corporation. You begin to build your own shit. You begin to align with those who want to create things that are truly built off integrity, that are truly built off being harmonious and not so much divided. Now, there are people who are on in these places that are sharing a message and so forth. They're still, they go through what they have to. My thing, where my experience is here, I was like, whoa. Sexual and sensual are related, but distinct terms that describe different aspects of the human experience. Now, this thing about, I'm trying to eat, ooh, it's hot. Like I said, we're not coming from a society where our mothers and grandmothers have even enjoyed or embrace their sexuality, or even claim their sensuality. Because when you're talking about coming from things, people that were forced on, we were forced, exploited through corn or certain stuff young, through molestation, generations coming from that. How can we say that we're not currently today seeing women do the same thing? And it's not about blaming them, it's about holding us accountable. Seeing women do the same thing, it just looks different. Same energy, same woundedness. In my previous video, I was telling you how you'll hear actually women say, which is so wild to me, and it looks different. Don't think it looks no different than a woman in a certain community, white picket fence, depending on what she is, whatever her nationality. She still is more focused on how certain men have to have this, or she has to be a part of a certain club or group. Again, things that deep down don't value her, don't reflect her value. It's just on a superficial level, monetary, just to be a part of something. Just to be a part of something, just to say they're a part of something. There's no difference in a certain demographics where a woman is coming from her father womb, or from some empty space or unresolved emotion, and literally telling a man that you have to have this to enjoy me, for me to be in your world. How the fuck is that not prostitution? How is that not degrading yourself to bring yourself to a state of even money? To bring yourself to a state of money, that is not even value. Because spiritual currency is in you, not on you. All those things you can create for yourself and create with someone. So you gotta realize we've lost sight of what fucking value really is. The value of sex. And that has nothing to do with money. There's no difference how it went from money on the street, prostitution, to on. The views, no different from. Hold on.
Yeah, I'm here from 2 to 3:30.
From who?
I said I'm here.
I already got this room, man.
I'm here from 2 to 3:30. Go and ask them.
Okay. Anywho, the interruptions with that. So, anywho, you're talking about transforming, or even the fact of seeing things going from more of a monetary thing, how it's been used to confuse women, to think that they have to lower their standards even for views or money. All that is no difference than just to be seen sexually, if we want to go deeper. Hold on 1 minute, I'm trying to look at something. So, yeah. So anywho, I'm going to make a part 2 to this because peace and bliss and shalom.